So right now, when farmers are applying herbicide, they spray down the entire field. But at least for post-emergence herbicides, that's a problem because the only areas in the fields that actually need to have herbicides applied to them are relatively small. Even a heavily infested field is going to be less than 10% of the actual field area that has weeds compared to 100% of the field area that gets sprayed down. So that causes three main problems. One of the problems is that some of these herbicides are very bad for the environment. For example, paraquat, which is used sometimes in corn here in Iowa, can cause, well, it's lethal to humans, but it also causes severe environmental effects. It bioaccumulates the same way that mercury does and tends to stick around for a long time in the environment, causing, for example, among other things, frogs to have weird congenital birth defects. It's expensive. So we all know farmers are operating on tight margins, and whereas in a good year they might make $200 an acre, they're spending $50 an acre on herbicide for soybeans. So that's kind of a problem. And then lastly, there's human effects. You all might have heard of Roundup, which is the most commonly used herbicide, was found to probably cause lymphoma in people. So this is Dwayne Johnson, who was a groundskeeper who used it for years and passed away from lymphoma. So we're wasting all this herbicide, but it causes a lot of severe effects, which got me thinking on how can we cut that down, which is why I founded Sprayer Mods. So my initial thought was to do something like this, put a tiny little robot, put it around the fields. It can apply just a little bit of herbicide exactly where it's needed. But that's a problem, A, because robots are hard to make, and I don't know how to make them. And B, because there's a lot of people doing that already. So I decided on a simpler solution. So instead of having a little robot going around, I would make a modification to someone's actual sprayer. I would attach cameras to it, and those cameras would detect if a weed is present and then open and close valves on the sprayer to turn off and on each nozzle, which lets it do basically the same thing that this robot is doing, but it's simpler to make, and there's no change for the farmer's workflow. So this is our progress so far. We've got decent models. They've got problems telling the difference between weeds and crops, but we're working on it. It'll get there. And a basic idea of the hardware. Most of what we're doing right now is trying to figure out the electrical connections. So the electrical connections need to be resistant to vibration, which turns out to be a problem because a lot of the connections are really flimsy with these tiny little wires and don't stand up well to years of hard use. And then waterproofing. Waterproofing isn't a technical problem, but a few people jumped on it early in terms of developing waterproof computer casings and charge very high amounts for them. So we're trying to figure out some custom solutions for that. So the three people working on this right now are myself and two other students at the University of Iowa, Blake Esplin and Benjamin Lang. I found them through just departmental avenues, and we're making steady progress, and hopefully we'll be launching a commercial project by the end of this summer.
Very cool. Any questions?
Surprise, I have questions. So, I've got some of this back in my background. I'll just warn you ahead of time that used to work for a company that worked with large agricultural manufacturers to do some design work. And so I know a little bit, not very much. But one of the things that I'm thinking about is I know some of the large manufacturers are coming out with this on their sprayers already. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming you're targeting like, models that people aren't, trading in and trading up. Do you happen to know, like what percentage is out there of the machines that are ready for this type of equipment where farmers aren't upgrading, they've got old sprayers versus who's already going out and getting the new technology with the new sprayers? I know there's some financial wizardry there on when people buy and not buy new equipment.
Yeah, so in terms of equipment that already has this capability, John Deere launched their equipment, I think in March,
Mm.
that has this capability. So the proportion of people who are actually using this is very low. I haven't yet been able to actually find anyone who is using it. But yeah, there were a couple of groups who all launched this at the same time. The reason why a lot of people, including me, kind of launched this at the same time is that simultaneously the computers and the algorithms which actually detect weeds in the fields, they kind of converged to the point where you could do it in real time at the same time. So NVIDIA, which is the company that produces all GPUs, released a new GPU, and GPUs are what they run these kinds of algorithms on. And this GPU was both a lot cheaper and a lot faster than what was out before. And then the advancements in self-driving cars have allowed these algorithms. So you can imagine it's the same type of problem to pick out a stop sign on a street as to pick out a weed in a field. Those have also been advancing at a very fast rate at the same time.
Gotcha. So you get to hit the ground running, right? My other question would be, and I'm going to just throw this out there because given that this is probably a competitor, I don't know how much the conversations could go back and forth, but are you familiar with Rantizo?
I have spoken with
Okay.
Michael Ott at
Yeah,
Rantizo.
there
Yes.
you go. Okay, I wasn't sure how much information y'all could exchange back and forth or how helpful that could be, but that's one other thing I wanted to throw out there. So perfect.
Hi, I have something to add. Well, first, I do have a question. I'm curious, did you come from like a family that, like, did you live on a farm? I'm just curious kind of how you got interested in this field. And then secondly, my dad actually started a business called Walker Ag Equipment where they built industrial sprayers. And like 3 years ago, he sold it to a large company called Oxbow International. And now he sits on the board there and he oversees like all the sprayers and all the sales and everything like that. So if you needed someone to talk to for customer discovery, I mean, this is his field, like it's all he does. So I would be happy to connect you with him if you wanted just a little bit more info.
I would absolutely love to talk to him.
Yeah, okay, I'll send you his contact information. I'll email it to you after this. But yeah, I'm curious, super curious how you kind of got interested in doing this.
Yeah, so I started off, I've always been wanting, I'm a computer science student, and that's always been my angle, but I wanted to work in agriculture. It's something I've really worried about, making sure everyone's fed. So it was something I thought a lot about. I'm not sure how I came upon the idea, other than initially I thought, all right, the way to go is tiny robots. But the more I talked to people, the tiny robots were not a good idea.
Right. Okay.
So
Awesome.
I tried to simplify it as much as I could, and this is what I ended up with.
Great.
Hey, Holly. I was wondering if you could talk to us about your customer discovery progress so far.
Yeah, so I've talked to about 13 people. And so far, I'm very encouraged by results. One thing I have found out is that organic people are not at all interested, or would not be at all interested, but that's okay. I've learned a lot more about how people do herbicide management. So the internet lies to you, as you all know. All these universities put out like herbicide application schedules. And I had kind of trusted those as being accurate in what people do. And these application schedules were highly, specific to one crop, and they gave exact times in the year. And then when I talked to people, it was, nah, we do the same thing with corn and soybeans. Why would we bother doing something else? The other thing I've learned is that weed management is not sort of farmers' priority. They're much more worried about input costs, and this is one of them. So if I can cut input costs for them, it's a good deal.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions?
So, what's your estimated effect on costs here? And I'm sorry if you covered this in your presentation and I missed it, but
Yeah,
how many $1 million are you looking at helping people save?
I should have stated that. So our system should be able to cut post-emergent herbicide costs by about 80%. So in terms of dollar amounts, that means farmers can save between, depending on what they're using, because it's very dependent on what they're using, between $7 to $20 an acre. And if you're working 1,000 acres, per year. So if you're working 1,000 acres and you're spending, and we could save you $10 an acre, we can save you $10,000 a year. As compared to our estimated unit price, which will probably come out between 25 and 30,000 based on current part estimates and manufacturing.
So it pays for itself in a couple of years.
Yes.
Have you thought yet about what support and maintenance? I know this is down the road, but what would support and maintenance look like for something like that? Because I know if a farmer's got this perfect window of weather to get out in a field and spray, and then something goes wrong, what do you think that's going to look like, helping them if something goes wrong?
Yeah, so an advantage of our system is that if it breaks down, it won't impede the base the existing sprayer's modification functionality. So the valves that we use to open and close sprayer nozzles, if they're not powered, if something breaks down, they're not powered, they just stay open. We do that so that if they're, for example, if they want to apply herbicide, they want to spray down their entire field, they can just leave our system off and go about it as normal. The other advantage is the system is pretty modular. So you would, if you did want that specific nozzle to be operational, you could just swap it out with a different camera valve set.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Holly, this is Eric. I have a question building off of Don's question. Really interesting idea, by the way. A lot of thoughts about this, but a couple of things. What is your long-term strategy? And that's a loaded question. I already have thoughts about it, but I want to see what your thoughts are. Talk to me about your intellectual property regime, what you're doing in that area. And based on your answer to those, I reserve the right to ask another question.
Understandable. So intellectual property, not sure yet. I've done some snooping around of existing patents, and I don't think I'm in
Conflict, yeah.
conflict with. There we go. This has been something that people have. This sort of idea has been floated around since the 90s. It's just that since now, people haven't been able to do it.
Right.
But I am meeting with a patent lawyer hopefully soon. Waiting for them to get back to my scheduling email. I'm so sorry. The next follow-up question was, where do I see this going?
Yeah.
Um,
Long-term plan.
I think acquisition would probably be a good thing for this company to spread the system. Either acquisition by, for example, a trailed sprayer company to say, hey, put this on our systems, have this built in, or for some other company to manufacture and sell it themselves. I say that because I don't have experience doing large scale manufacturing. It's one of the things I'm more nervous about in terms of this project.
Yeah, that was the connection to Don's question. To really scale this out and be able to provide that kind of maintenance, it almost has to be, a large company. And so if that's true, my advice would be do everything possible to set this up to sell as quickly as possible. Get your patents in line, get your intellectual property, anything you can do to make this unique so that large companies like Deere or Case or whomever look at this and say, oh, this is an easy purchase, buy this intellectual property, we can scale it out in a way that you would never be able to, you and your team, and look at it as a project to get it to acquisition ASAP, rather than something that you'll be doing in 10 or 20 years yourself or with the other folks on your group. So
Okay.
thanks. Gonna be interesting. Keep an eye. What's the company name again?
Sprayer mods.
All
Have
right.
to change it from precision sprayers because someone else took that already.
Yeah, find some way to make some unique part of this that you can patent. Maybe it's your learning models. I don't know. That's an interesting question. Is can you patent machine learning or AI models? And I was wondering how you're doing that. You touched on that, but can you spend the time and energy to develop a set of models that you could, maybe your product is actually the models to identify weeds, not actually the hardware. The hardware only proves that your model works. And that, you spend your time and energy to make sure that those machine learning models to identify a weed in a field on a rolling machine and alter all kinds of conditions. I'm sure that's valuable. I don't know if you can patent that. It's an interesting, probably a separate discussion, but something around there. But that's my advice.
Yes, I believe you can patent machine learning models and code. They might be sort of automatically covered by IP in the same way, for example, some code is automatically covered by intellectual property because when you're writing it, it's the same way as if you wrote a book. So
Yeah, that's copyright. And you might be, I don't know, patent is stronger. Copyright is good. Copyright's also relatively easy for a large company just to work around. But I'm sure that attorney, I'm not a lawyer, by the way. I'm sure that intellectual property attorney will help you with that. So really good stuff. Interesting. Other interesting stuff.
Thank you.
So on the IP talk, you mentioned you were waiting to hear back from a lawyer. If you need a second opinion or someone who can get back to you faster, I know someone here in Iowa City who specializes in IP and copyright, so I can connect you to if you'd like.
I would love to be in contact with them.
Is this your email on the screen here?
Yes.
Okay, I'll get you two in touch. Her name's Kelsey. Just making sure it's not the same lawyer you're waiting to hear back from.
Any other questions? If
All
not,
right.
I will ask our traditional final question here at 1MC Iowa City. What can we as the community do to help you?
I would love to be in contact with more farmers, first of all. And if anyone knows, especially commercial spraying companies, so people that you pay to go out and spray down your fields for you, if anyone knows those people, I would very, very much love to be in contact with those people.
Excellent. And we've got your contact information there. So if anyone has any follow-up questions, feel free to email or call. So thank you very much. Great presentations today.